Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and channel members out there. And if you're watching on YouTube or X, and if you're listening to the audio only or the replay, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. My social media links are in the descriptions. Links to watch my documentaries on Amazon Prime and Tubi are also in the description. Currently in the process of making my next documentary, Psychic Agent, and hopefully it'll be out in a few months and released on Amazon Prime and Apple TV Plus. Also, I was made aware that Wayne Steiger's wife was involved in a car accident a few weeks back and has been going through physical therapy. So thoughts and energy with Lynn and Wayne through these times, and that she makes a full and complete recovery. Wayne has always been really good to me, and I consider him a really good friend. So if we can have his wife, Lynn, if we can, put our thoughts and send her some recovering energy, because I know that we can. And I know that remote healing is very possible. So if we could do that, that would be really great. But with that down, we have with us today former DoD, U.S. Army military intelligence security specialist, anti-terrorism and counterintelligence investigator, author, and he's in a brand new documentary based upon his work and investigations at the Meadow, the South Skinwalker Ranch. Here to discuss it with us, Trey Hudson. Welcome back to the show. How's it going, my friend?
Yeah, it's going great. I want to wish everybody out there a very, very good and happy Thanksgiving. Things are doing good. Glad that the film finally got out. A little kind of teaser is I was up at Land Between the Lakes about 3 weeks ago, filming another documentary with some names of some folks people would recognize. So I've just been as they say, busier than a one-legged man at a butt kicking contest.
Yeah, we've been talking about this documentary you've been wanting to do a documentary for a really long time. Since I met you in like 2020, you've been wanting to do the footage, and we've been talking about this footage that you have out there that I'd seen at UFO MegaCon I'm pretty sure it was 2020. It was like the end of 2020. September of 2020, and we've been talking about it, but now we can finally show it, and now it's finally in the documentary. So can you give us a little bit of background on how this came about and how you got involved with Tony Merkel's film production crew and how it all of it came together?
Yeah, it was kind of cool because I was about the time you and I met that the Meadow Project, the first book, was starting to develop a little bit of inertia. And I was starting to go around and make these presentations, and every time I would make a presentation and people would see, the data, and the evidence, up on the screen in front of them, they were just mesmerized. It's like, oh my goodness, this stuff is fantastic. And I started receiving, more feedback, more positive feedback. Yeah, and some negative feedback, but that goes with the territory. And at that time, my publisher, Philip Mantle, was pulling in some of his contacts, and I was doing the radio circuit, the podcast circuit, and somewhere along that line, Tony Merkel heard of me or heard one of the podcast or something, and had invited me to come on his show, The Confessionals, and I did, and it was a very popular episode. It was received very well, and the people were, of course, intrigued by the story, of the Meadow. And, at the end of it, while we were chit-chatting, and I don't know if your viewers know this, but after the show, the host and guest chit-chat, that's kind of a secret show. But, we were chit-chatting, and he said, hey, man, I'd love to make a movie out of this. I'm working on a film now that I'm trying to get released. And that time it was Bigfoot and the Missing Man. I didn't know what he was working on, but he said, I need to get this latest film out. And afterwards, let's seriously sit down and talk about doing a documentary. And, I hate to sound jaded, but anybody that's been in this business for a while and has talked to production companies and all that, you hear that all the time, so I thought, and forgive me, Tony, he and I joke about this, but I thought it was another, don't call us, we'll call you kind of thing. So, I just kind of filed that away of, that would be cool if it happened, but I'm certainly not holding my breath. And doggone it, after Bigfoot and the Missing Man came out, I got a phone call from Tony. He goes, "Hey, let's talk about this documentary." And we set up filming dates at a place in Tennessee. There was a cabin that was rented, and we did a lot of the interviewing there and the briefing of the team. Joel Thomas, Ward Heine, and Caleb Moore, and then we almost exactly a year ago we went out to the Meadow for to actually do the principal photography and some B-roll stuff. And now we have the Meadow Project, which is a feature-length film, and with a really cool add-on documentary I got to pitch called the Helm and Lens, which I think is equally as cool.
Where can people watch that documentary really quickly, just to get this out front? Where can they watch it?
You can go to www.merkelfilms, and if you click on films, it'll come up with a list of all of their films that Tony's distributing, and you'll see the Meadow Project right there. And there's the Meadow Project, the bare bones. Then there's the Meadow Project bonus pack, which has the Meadow Project, several hours of just raw footage that people can review and see if they see anything and report it back to us. And then, of course, the Helm and the Lens, which is basically our experiments with the infamous God helmet.
I really liked the documentary. I thought it was really intriguing, especially just the property in and of itself. It's how many miles is the Meadow in square miles? How much?
The Meadow is about 8 acres. It's about 8 acres. So, I mean, it's a big field, but the actual area, of high strangeness, and you and I were talking about the UFO footage and some of that other stuff, was taken maybe 5 miles from the Meadow. So that whole region is kind of freaky and weird. So you're probably talking about 10 square miles of just an area just ripe for exploration, and sticking your toe into the pool of high strangeness.
And it's kind of different than like a regular standard paranormal investigation. You know what I mean? Like a standard paranormal investigation is like in a building. It's kind of different when you're out exploring the forest. You know what I mean? It's so vast and so deep, and there's a lot of things that are going on in the forest, and there's a lot to go over. So you could probably spend weeks and weeks and weeks out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easily. It's an area that's so remote, and Tony kind of talks about it in the narration, as he says, we turned off the hardtop road, and it was miles and miles and miles and miles of dirt roads with no cell reception. So, I mean, it is way back in the middle of nowhere. And, it has some challenges, not only, personal challenges about you're investigating stuff in an area that's completely wild and untamed, but there's some logistical challenges, that go along with it. But, that is what, in my opinion, really separates, the hardcore, boots on the ground researchers versus people that, might, be dabbling in it a little bit. It's, it's really what separates the what they say, the men from the boys. It's been very rewarding. And I think part of the reason for that is its extreme remoteness.
Well, we're gonna have to get into some footage here, because people always get upset whenever the show goes on for like 30 minutes and we don't show any footage, and the title of the show is what they captured in the forest. Isn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where's the footage? I want to see the footage.
Oh, I've been hearing that for years. And folks, I am happy to say that it is out there. The footage is public now, so I can, I kind of had to respect Merkel Media and Dark Holler Studios and not put the footage out there before the film was public. But now, cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Release the hounds.
That's right, Trey. We're gonna watch it, and it's I think that it's convincing evidence, and it's probably the best evidence that anyone has really gotten at this type of location. And Sam has put the link to the documentary in the chat here, and it's also in the description of the video as well. So if you just hit the more button underneath the title of the video, it'll pop down. You can click on the link there. But I'm getting ready to play the portal video. It's around 3 minutes long. So if you could set up a little bit of the portal video and exactly what's going on, and there's going to be some talking over it as well. But I think that it's important for people to watch the entire thing, so you can get a really good idea of exactly what was going on. But if you could set that up
Yeah.
Of course, really quickly before we start to watch it. And of course, we'll talk during it as well,
Yeah,
but you
sure.
just give a little run on before we start.
Yeah, it's February of 2017. We had teams set down in the meadow and another team on top of the ridge, which I was a part of the ridge team. And we had one member of the team on the ridge that noticed a box or a cube in the meadow, and he described it as about the size of a telephone or communications interface box on the side of the road. When we finally got the thermal back to me, it had disappeared. So, we kind of blew that off. Maybe it was a misidentification. When we dropped down in the meadow, we started hearing our other teams saying that they were picking up these cubes or boxes in different parts of the meadow on their thermals. It would show up, dissipate, show up, dissipate, dissipate, show up. And we started vectoring over to the team that was having this activity. And by the time we got there, the box or cube had dissipated. And they decided they were going to vector us to the area where the cube or box was. Now, this is a forest in February, no leaves, it's completely bare, and you'll see that in the reconstruction video. And so we dispatched a team to the area where the box or cube was. And as they passed what was the threshold, their thermal signatures completely disappeared. I mean, completely. And there's nothing out there large enough to obscure the thermal signatures of 3 or 4 people. There's not a tree out there that big. There's not a mound of dirt. There's nothing that would obscure it. And the individuals, when they went in, they said that the area was colder than the surroundings. It was very dark and very still, like being inside of a black velvet bag, like with blackout curtains. And they didn't have any encumbrances going in. They just walked in. But then when they came back out after about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, they started encountering brambles and briars, having to fight their way back out that weren't there when they went in. So it was like there were 2 realities existing at the same time. And it gets even weirder, when we start doing analysis that's not in the film. And I'll talk about that after we watch this. That ties into some pretty remarkable stuff that came out of some quantum analysis of some footage. So
here we go. Let's start it up.
Halt. You are right on the edge, but it is fading away.
So about how far is this person away from where they are?
Yeah, they're probably about maybe 40 meters, 40 yards, 50 yards.
So not very far.
No. And you can see how bright their thermal signature is.
Yeah, very bright. I've used some thermal imaging cameras before, and they're very strong and very powerful.
Did they just disappear?
No.
No, I'm looking at their thermal signature there. You were directly on it, but it has faded almost away. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely faded away now. It's gone.
Now we had two operators. One, the male was watching through one thermal.
There's one
The
over
female
there.
is the one actually recording this.
Is it?
And now they're completely gone.
They're gone. He just walked into nothing.
Right.
So they are into the wood line now.
You should
'Cause
still
I
be picking them up.
Yeah, and the thing about the wood line is that it kind of goes up at an angle, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that could block them from seeing the signature on the thermal.
No, and that's what you'll see in the recreation is there's a ridge that actually goes up right behind the flatness, of the meadow. And, as much as we tried during the recreation, we could not come up with a situation where we could completely obliterate the heat signature of multiple people. It just wasn't possible. And what's interesting is near the end of this, you're going to see the camera pan to the right, and there's a small group of trees, and you'll hear the female operator say, "Who or what is that?" And she's recording the heat signatures of two entities. I'm going to use that loose term, about 3 or 4 feet high. Now they're coming out.
Yeah.
And you can see it's almost like they just kind of pop back into existence.
Yeah.
Okay, now look to the right. You can see those signatures right there on the right.
Yeah, it looks like a very dark man standing right here.
Yeah, but it's the white heat signature you're looking for right now.
Oh, that's right in the about the center.
Yeah.
We don't know. What is that? All right, there they are. Look at.
What is their team 4? Grumpy's team 4, correct?
Oh yeah, I see them.
3. Team 3. What is your location?
Really far. It looks like that they're further away.
Yeah, and they're behind actually a small group of trees. And you hear him querying group number 3, team 3, where are you? Making sure they hadn't left station, and they're picking up their heat signatures, but team 3 had not moved. What's interesting is right before we had dropped down into the meadow and worked our way over to this team, and you have this video also, is we saw in the meadow some heat signatures that were man-sized. I'm going to say 6 feet tall, 1.75 meters tall, maybe half a meter wide. That was tall, short, tall, short, tall, short, tall, and then it splits into 2 and then disappears. Not long after that, we see these 2 entities over here that are two heat signatures of a small statured something or other that does not correspond with the known location of any of our team members. Now you got to remember, this is an open field, so nobody's just going to be able to walk into us without us knowing about it. But yet we had these 2 things watching us as we're filming our team going into, I'm going to say the P word, what we think is a portal. And I use the word portal because it's an easy word. It's a gateway, a doorway into another reality, another state of being. And, quite frankly, I think that's what happened to these guys is they walked into something that wasn't here, call it the upside down. That's a popular term right now. The scary thing is, of the 4 people that went into that box, only 2 are still left alive.
And they developed some sort of cancer. Is that correct?
Yeah. One individual had prostate cancer in remission for years and years and years. And it came back with a vengeance not long after this. Another individual who was a former Army Ranger, power lifter, just a really, strong, robust guy, died unexpectedly with a pulmonary, no, not an embolism, pulmonary edema. And just out of the blue started, well, I'm not going to go into it. It's kind of graphic, but he died very suddenly in a very graphic and horrible way. I was one of the people that went into that. And now I've developed plaque psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disorder. So, is correlation causality? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying this caused it, but I think it's interesting that the people that have gone into that thing, 2 of them are dead. I'm left. I've got some health issues that are tied to autoimmune. Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan talks about people that have had encounters with high strangeness developing autoimmune disorders. Now I have something associated with autoimmune. And it just, kind of makes you wonder.
Wait, so you were one of the people that?
Yeah.
You were one of the 3 people?
4 people, yeah. Total of 4. We actually had 2 instances where we went into it. The one team went in, came out, and then another separate team went in. That wasn't recorded, but yeah, we had several teams that went in, and I was of a total 4 people went in. Half of them are dead, and I'm one of the ones obviously still alive.
Wow. What is the other person that went in? Is he experiencing anything strange?
Daryl, not that I know of. He hasn't mentioned anything strange. Now the cinematographer, the FLIR operator, she's developed some some health issues that's kind of unexplained, and she kind of goes into that in the film. She's being interviewed that several of us have just kind of weird health things that have popped up after this encounter.
Okay, let's watch the raw one more time, just so in case
Okay.
people missed it and missed exactly what was going on, and
Sure.
we'll watch the recreation, because of course there's going to be doubters. There's going to be people that said that they just walked in behind a bunch of trees and
Right.
the deer wasn't able to pick it up, but they did a recreation of it, and it's I think that it's impossible for 3 people to just go missing on FLIR footage in the woods. Now if this was in a house, that's a different story, because
Right.
FLIR can't, like some of the FLIR camera, like the military has FLIR cameras that can see through walls and see through roofs of houses from helicopters and stuff, but a regular FLIR camera that you're going to get up that's not military grade can't see through walls and houses. So it's not like they went around a corner in a house and they're on
Right.
the other side of a wall. There is no wall here. So let's rewatch this part again, and when they disappear,
Sure.
and then when they reemerge, and then we'll watch the recreation.
Sure. Thanks.
It's completely faded away now. It's gone.
Well, is one of them right up under it? Or what was it?
See, this looks like 2 people have kind of disappeared, because you
Yeah.
can only see one on there
Right.
right now, that one signature. So it seems like 2 people went in
Right.
first, and then boom,
Gone.
gone. And he was just standing there for a minute, and then he took like one step in,
Yeah.
and he was gone. He wasn't moving around. It's not like he was walking up the little ridge there, or up
Right.
the little hill there. He wasn't, he was standing still, and then he took one step, and then he was essentially gone, or maybe
And-
2 steps or 3 steps.
And what's interesting is and you hit on the abruptness of the of being obscured, from the thermal. It's like there was a linear delineation, and if you're on one side of that delineation, you're visible. If you're on the other side, you're not. And what were they describing, before this film was done? Is they were describing a box with very distinct vertical, delineation. And as soon as you stepped, past that delineation, your heat signature is completely obliterated.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, because that person was not moving. The two seemed like that they were moving, and then they disappeared, but it wasn't. And then the one person was just standing there. And then boom,
Right.
here they just come out of nowhere, and you can see them emerging.
Yeah.
You can see them kind of like almost rematerializing almost. See that what guy just coming out?
Yeah. And you see how bright their heat signature is.
Yeah, immediately bright like that. Like if it was really far in a distance, like this entity is right here, it would come into focus more the closer that the entity or the person got to the FLIR camera.
Right.
So it looked like a dot or a speck further away, and then as they got closer, it would shape more and get more defined.
And
But
you see in the heat signature you're looking at now in that little group of trees, it's kind of broken up because that's looking through foliage and trees. But their heat signature wasn't broken up. It was like 100% and then completely gone.
Yeah. All right, now let's watch the recreation here, because I think this is, really proves what was going on.
And forgive me for the jerkiness of the creation. I was trying to run 2 pieces of equipment at the same time, so it was a little challenging with 2 tripods. So just forgive me on that.
Yeah.
And you notice that the team will be approaching a bunch of bushes, and they deliberately go behind that. And even when they go behind that thick vegetation, you still can see their heat signature.
Yep.
And this was during the day. And so their heat signature should have been able to be obscured easier because the ambient temperature is closer to the temperature of the human body. But we were not able to completely obliterate. And you can see how wide open that is. And that was taken during the same time of year that the original box video or portal video was taken. And you can see how sparse vegetation is there in the background as it goes up the ridge.
Yeah, how far would they have to walk up the ridge in order to disappear off of the flare? Okay, so you can see right here, they would have to walk up this little ridge here.
Oh, yeah.
And even if the camera was, you know, it would be almost impossible for 3 people to walk in the straight line up this ridge,
Right.
being covered by one tree the entire time.
And one of the larger trees you see is, if you look to the left, you'll see a downed tree, and just to the left of that downed tree, you'll see a vertical tree. That's one of the larger trees, on the edge of the meadow, on the north end of the meadow. And if you had basically 2 guys get real friendly with one another and bunch up behind it, like you said, stacked on one another, yeah, you could hide behind that tree. But 3 people, it's just not going to happen. And something else is, we have the affidavits from everybody there. There was no chicanery. There was no trickery. These were just, people experiencing something very extraordinary.
So, how long do you think that it would take to get, let's say that this was the frame, right? This was the frame that it was on, the camera didn't move. How long do you think that it would take to walk to the bottom of this ridge right here to completely get out of frame of this camera?
Well, just past where the individuals are now, behind them, there's like a swampy area. So they would have to fight their way through that swamp. And then they would hit the bottom of the ridge, and it would probably take you maybe 5-10 minutes because that's pretty steep to fight your way up that ridge.
So basically impossible in the amount of time
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
video was running for them to get out of frame of the camera.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it would have to be perfect. They couldn't slip, they couldn't step to one side or the other. It would have to be a perfect, highly coordinated, effort between not only the individuals but the cinematographer. And so this was actually this footage was featured on the Discovery Channel and was sent to 3 separate analysts. And the best the analysts could come up with was inconclusive. They couldn't detect any hoaxing, that they really don't know what happened that caused the heat signature of the individuals to disappear.
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain too, and I was trying to rack it ever since that I seen this footage in 2020, and there's not any good, real explanation as to what happened.
Right.
Now, whenever they were inside of this, let's call it a portal, or when they disappeared, what did they say happened in, what was that, around 90 seconds, and that they
Yeah.
completely disappeared off of the flare? What
Yeah.
did
And,
they happened in that 90 seconds that we
Yeah.
couldn't see them?
and we have this, we actually did a video after action review that night, right after this happened. And that's the transcript of that is in my first book. And they talk about going into this thing. And they, like I said, they walked in unencumbered. They just walked in without any difficulty. The temperature dropped, which is very important. It was like the environment was different. It was like they were inside of a black bag or inside of blackout curtains. Like you would have in the theater. It was like very dark. Like they were inside of some sort of dark encapsulation. They couldn't see the sky. They couldn't see anything around them. It was completely dark, very quiet, and they just felt a sense of stillness. then they turned around and came back. Discretion was the better part of valor. So they decided to work their way back out. And when they did, they started, running into branches and brambles that were not there when they took the same route going in that they took out. So it's like the world was different inside of this little bubble. But instead of being a bubble, it was a cube. And the world started shifting back to the normal reality, right there in the edge of the meadow when they came back out. So it's like you had two quantum realities existing, but not on a quantum scale, on a macro scale. And, that's not the first time that happened, that we've had, two realities existing at the same time in the meadow. And I go back to the 2016 episode of, one of our team members being seen turn into a ball of energy, and travel, tens of yards, in a few seconds. And then when the thermal was brought back on him, he turned back into a man-sized heat signature, but he had no recollection of moving that distance at that speed. His recollection was he just walked over there normally. So it's like two realities existing at the same time at the same place. So, in my book, I call that kind of cool,
It's definitely really interesting. So whenever they went into this other reality, or went through this portal, did they realize that something had changed immediately? Yeah. And then they were like, we got to get out of this. Let's turn around and go back the exact same way that we came.
Yeah. We were concerned about, and I don't mean to make this sound melodramatic, so forgive me if it sounds like it, but one of the things that we were joking about when we were approaching that thing is who had the larger life insurance policy and whose families could survive longer if we didn't come back out. I don't mean to make it sound all heroic and everything. It's just something we were kind of joking about because we really didn't know what was on the other side of that vertical, that imaginary vertical line that the other team had described, that was the edge of the box. And, we kind of in the back of our mind is like, what if we don't come back out? And maybe that wasn't, looking back on it in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have done that without some protocols in place, safety protocols. But yet we did it anyway. And, I was going to say we lived to tell the tale. Some of us lived. So, there you go.
Yeah, it's very similar to what people describe when they have survived the missing 411 stuff. It's the same type of thing exactly. that they talked about whenever they would shift into this completely different reality. Things were very disorienting. They didn't know where they were. It was like the environment had completely changed, like they were in a separate reality. And then the people that survived managed to get out of that separate reality in some kind of way. I really think that the survivors of the so-called missing 411 are some of the most interesting ones, because it gives an idea of exactly what was going on, and you can talk to the person and be like, hey, like what exactly happened, and that gives you an idea of what might have happened to the people that didn't survive.
Right. And it probably wouldn't surprise you that this is within about 50 miles of one of those clusters that David Paulides has come up with.
Yeah, and it is very, very, because whenever I seen this, I was like, holy crap, what is this? What is it? And I was like, wow, this is incredible footage. But we have some other footage here. We have a figure that you were talking about earlier, that the Bob's Zoom figure. This is the entity that kind of splits into two.
Right.
Boom. There's two of them. Now that's not the enhanced footage.
No.
I have the enhanced footage here. That was just the raw. Let's watch the raw. Let's watch the raw one more time.
And that was pretty much in the location where Daryl, who was the original person, we were sitting very high up on a ridge looking down. And that's in the same location where Daryl had said he saw a box on his thermal, a cube sitting in the meadow. And then Bob picked up these, whatever these are, on his thermal in the same area. So, are the cubes used for perhaps transportation, a way that, something can move from one realm to another? Makes you wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we have the enhanced version that you get a better idea of what exactly is going on here. Boom, split into two. That's wild.
Yeah, and not long after that, the two heat signatures that did not correspond with any team members were seen in the small group of trees about 40 yards from where we were filming or the team was filming the box video, portal video. So, are these the things that walked over there, and were they observing us as we, entered into the cube? So I don't know. It would make sense.
Whereabouts was this taken in the meadow?
That was taken on the extreme west end of the meadow. So it was probably, I'd say maybe 400 feet west of where the cube was, 400 or 500 feet.
And Bob took this footage?
Yeah, Bob Wilson.
And he's the one that went into the portal and sadly passed away recently, right?
Yeah, you remember meeting Bob there in Laughlin. Yeah.
Yeah, so this one is super fascinating. Didn't you guys have one with that had like some kind of Bigfoot footage as well?
Yeah, we had one. It was once again Bob. He recorded a heat signature that was actually colder than the surroundings. And it was like a large hulking figure, with a head basically sitting right on his shoulders with these long, kind of sinewy arms, just kind of standing there, in the wood line doing this back and forth. And what's interesting is it was colder than the surroundings, which doesn't make sense for a hot-blooded creature. And we've been in other locations away from the meadow where likewise we have filmed, cryptids, Bigfoot-like creatures that are colder than the ambient surroundings, which does not make sense for any kind of primate. But it does make sense for something that might be winking in and out of existence.
Yeah, that's what I really liked about the documentary was one of the individuals in the documentary thought that he had seen
don't give it away. Don't give the ending away.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was
I just kind of like that aspect of it because it's like, there's something that because I've had things like that happen to me before that has been very devastating and detrimental to me,
Yeah, what I thought was interesting, and I was not expecting it at all, and I'm going to put this little teaser out there for everybody, is somebody saw something that turned out not to be what they thought it was. And I'll just leave it at that. But yet the meadow, in true meadow fashion, has a way of letting you know that it's still in the game. Whatever the entity or entities are that are affiliated or associated with the meadow have a way of letting you know that they're still here, and they're not going to let you get away without knowing that. So I'll throw that out there.
Yes, we'll leave it at that. And also have some other footage of a UAP. Now, this was captured more recently, right? I think you sent this to me separate from the other ones from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I did. That was that was in February of 21 at a place called Stevens Lake, and that's the cover name. That's not the real name of the place, but it's It's probably about 4 miles from the meadow, and we had set up a sky watch in that area, and they caught these really interesting UAPs. And if you'll play it, I'll just kind of walk people through it,
Yeah.
and we'll take a look at it. So we're looking at what we're looking at are these two flashing lights, which you see are kind of in the upper part, and then right above the tree line. These lights were so stationary that I originally thought they were antennas that I, for some reason, had not noticed, on all the years I've been going there. But they're very slowly dropping down below the horizon, moving at a 45-degree angle to right below the horizon. And they're blinking on and off. Now, I had a set of 10x binoculars with this. This was taken with a Psionics night vision camera, but I had a pair of 10x binoculars. And when you look at each individual blinking light, it's actually a series of two lights next to one another, blinking on, off, on, off, on, off. And the weird thing about it is you can see they're slowly dropping below the horizon. We had been seeing aircraft all evening. And so we were very familiar with, the navigation, and has anti-collision lights on an aircraft, the green and red navigation lights, the white marker strobes on the wing tips, the red anti-collision light, on the underside and upper side of an aircraft. And through the 10x binoculars, none of those other beacons were observable. They were just a series of white flashing lights, almost like headlights, in the sky, just blinking on and off. And so I'm also a MUFON field investigator. And so I, put on my, MUFON FI hat, and I did an analysis of this, and I could not find any air traffic that corresponded. I knew the exact latitude and longitude of my location. I took a compass out and I shot a direct azimuth of exactly where these were. So I knew, exactly where they were, how many degrees above the horizon, and I could find no corresponding air traffic. I could not find any corresponding light pattern of a known aircraft that did not have the anti-collision rotating beacon or the green and red navigation lights. And so, I've got some friends in MUFON that are taking a look at this to see if they can maybe decipher exactly what it was we saw. And it's interesting to note that this area, this region has a very, very rich history of UFO and UAP sightings. So, this just falls right in with the history of the area.
So no satellites. This couldn't be satellites, because
No.
sometimes, people think that it's a UFO and it's really a satellite or kind of other aircraft. But you're right. Yeah. Whenever you're looking through military grade night vision goggles and something is blinking multiple different lights, then it's definitely an aircraft. But this seems to just be blinking one solid light.
Well, and on a satellite, what you're actually seeing is as the satellite moves across the sky horizon to horizon. And what's interesting is these appeared high in the sky and drop below the horizon, where if a satellite or aircraft is approaching you, it will start below the horizon, come above you, and then drop on the horizon behind you. And these just appeared up in the sky, just all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere and then drop below the horizon. A satellite, as it moves from horizon to horizon, is usually a steady light because it's reflecting sunlight off the body of the satellite. It doesn't actually have a strobe or a blinking light on it. Now, sometimes you'll get it as it rotates. You might get like an iridium flare or something, but these lights were constant. Like they were engineered and had a purpose to blink at that particular rate. Now, what that purpose is, I really don't know. But it was one, and I just put this out there for people. When I go and give the lecture, I say, "This is what I saw. These are the tools I used to try to figure out what it was." I looked at all the air traffic in that region. Nothing corresponded, at that particular place. It was moving unlike stars, because you can see the stars are stationary. And so, I just have to put this up as unidentified, which is what an unidentified flying object is.
It's really interesting. It almost looks like some Stranger Things stuff, like whenever she would put up the lights to communicate with Will on the upside down, and all the lights were like going off.
Right.
It kind of seems like.
And what I thought was, still weird about that is the two things stayed constant, the constant distance between one another. They just moved in tandem, slowly below the horizon and then disappeared.
How long were you out there filming those?
I filmed them for probably about 5 or 6 minutes until they dropped below the horizon. But like I said, what really brought it to my attention is I'm sitting there, with my camera and everything set up. And what we were originally looking for were flashes or orbs above the lake, because there had been a lot of reports of flashes of lights and deep in the forest and orbs. And then, I looked and I see these blinking lights and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't remember there being a tall radio antenna. In all these years, I've never noticed that. That's strange. And then, the more I sat there and I watched, I'm like, that seems to be moving. So I moved my camera up and actually, started recording. And, much like I thought, they, slowly moved, down below the horizon. So that's just a big question mark.
Does anybody live on this property? Are there any
Oh, no.
on the property?
No. It's it is a public nature preserve. So there's no private property here. There's nobody that lives there.
Was this Native American land at one
Yeah.
time?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
That's really interesting. Is there any other type of history that
Yes.
went on here?
Yeah, that area has a very rich history of conflict, between primarily between Native American tribes. And there was some conflict between U.S. Forces and settlers and Native American tribes. And I'm not going to go into the history because that'll give the location away. But yeah, there's a history of conflict. You go back and you look at the folkloric history of this area. There's a lot of old ghost stories. There's stories of wild men in the woods, which was a way that the early reporters used to describe Bigfoot as, families of wild men. And then, of course, UAPs and UFOs. And and cryptids. So, yes, kind of, the model I use is if you see an area that has a rich history of UFOs, a rich history, folkloric history of ghost stories, and a rich history of reports of cryptids, and you see a concentration, that's somewhere where you probably ought to look, and you'll more likely than not find some really strange stuff going on there.
How close is the closest town to this? Is it kind of far away?
Yeah, it's about 15 or 20 miles, depending on what route you take. So it takes you about 40 minutes, 50 minutes to get into town.
Mm. So what would this area be used for? If there's like, do people go up there and camp and like?
Yeah, camping, hunting, logging. The entity that owns this property, will issue out timber consignments, to companies, so they'll come in there and log it every once in a while. So it's it's basically an area for public use, which is a very wide umbrella. Public being not only you and me going out there to camp, but also natural resources like logging and things like that.
Have you guys had any like hitchhiker effect stuff going on?
Absolutely.
Within your investigation team? Have you experienced?
Yeah. Some of the strangest stuff, and I'm going to try to look up these photographs while I'm talking to you. Probably the strangest thing that happened to me is not too far from where I'm sitting right now, maybe only 35 yards, is I was out tootling around one day, and there's a place that I can't get grass to grow. And I looked down at the ground, and there were a series of canine tracks. And the canine tracks, were kind of interesting. But what really made them stand out is they were 6 inches in diameter. Now that's larger than one of the largest wolves in North America. That's more like dire wolf kind of stuff. Huge canine tracks of 6 inches, just a few yards from my back door. And what gets even stranger is these canine tracks start at a very distinctive place and then end at a very distinctive place. So it's a finite track line, and the track line looks almost bipedal. And what's where you start throwing kind of a twist into that is you go back and you look at some of the accounts of people that have encountered other things in areas of high strangeness, like Skinwalker Ranch, is they talk about large canine type creatures, not only seen at the ranch, but following them home. There was a case of one of the original NIDS investigators, National Institute for Discovery Science, going back home in Virginia, and in his suburban Virginia backyard, his family reported seeing large upright canines. And you also go back and look at like Marley Woods, and the people that research Marley Woods and the people that live in that area talk about seeing large upright canines. And so there seems to be some sort of nexus between dogmen, and I'm just going to use that term because it's bipedal and has feet like a dog, and these instances of high strangeness. And I'm trying to find the picture of the track line because it's pretty cool. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to show a picture of the track. And this is a 6-inch forensic rule that I keep in my camera bag. So I'm going to see if y'all can see that.
That's a big print.
That's a big print. Now I'm going to show you the track line. And that's a 36-inch rule. So it starts in a very distinctive place and ends in a very distinctive place. And my dog is a 95-pound boxer mix. So he's a big boy. And his prints aren't nearly as deep and as large as those.
That'd have to come from like a really big
animal.
Big animal, yeah.
Yeah. So, that you take that into account with, like the giant wolf being seen at the Sherman Ranch when it was owned by the Shermans, and they shot at it, and the 30-06, you had no effect on this large wolf type creature they saw. And then you go back to the NIDS investigator when Bigelow owned the place, seeing these large canines in the backyard. And then you have my account, and then you go up to like Land Between the Lakes and all the very rich, folklore of a large canine type bipedal creature up there. There's something about these bipedal canines and high strangeness. Now is it an avatar? Is it a archetype? That is in our collective consciousness. I don't know, but there seems to be a some sort of correlation, and that's the kind of hitchhiker stuff that I've had. Now, in my second book, I talk about one of our team members who, after the portal incident, she started having dreams of orbs coming into her room. Now, we're lucky enough to have a psychotherapist on our staff for the Anomalous Studies and Observation Group, and he took her and put her under a hypnotic regression. You think Bud Hopkins and John Mack kind of stuff. So he put her under hypnotic regression, and what came out of that is these things would come in through her window and would grab her feet, and then she had a large entity standing next to her by the bed, trying to pull her off the bed, and she would wake up with marks on her body, like scratches and actual marks. And the entity that stood above her bed, she recounted as being like a witch or an old woman, which is interesting because you go back into the folklore and you hear about the folklore of the old crone. And a really good example of that is Russian folklore of Baba Yaga, the witch who lives in the woods in a house on chicken legs. She was the archetypical, old crone, of the forest. So, that was actually happening at her house. So, she had something follow her home. So, and we've had other filmmakers come out there that refuse to come back to the meadow because things have followed them home. So absolutely, yes. The hitchhiker effect is alive and well at the meadow. Oh, you're on mute.
and do that once, at least once every show.
That's fine.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to a lot of the other ranches and a lot of other experiences that people have claimed to have happened. Sort of like what Katie Page explained
Oh,
at Colorado Ranch, and
oh, yeah, absolutely.
people have explained with Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I don't know how big I am on regression. Do you think regression is real?
I think it's real in the fact that hypnosis has been used to help people remember things that they have forgotten, and don't even think about UFOs and all of that stuff. They just think about people that have like been in accidents or have had traumatic events that their brain has put a block in front of them to protect their psyche from post-traumatic stress syndrome or something like that. And through hypnotic regression, they've been able to pull those memories back out, put them into the forefront, and help people deal with that trauma. Hypnotic regression has been invaluable, in psychiatric treatment of individuals who have gone through trauma or other, very meaningful events. So, you take that and you look at it through the optics of, would it be beneficial through somebody who went through a traumatic event? The abduction phenomena, I have to take it on face value. There are people that, recount these experiences. There are people that, have some sort of, anecdotal evidence of these experiences. So I can't just discount them completely. And it's so widespread. So, I think, I have to put some value in hypnotic regression, or else we wouldn't have used it, as one of the tools in our toolbox.
I just feel like whenever there's money involved, like people will they'll just say whatever you want them to say, right? Like if you wanted to get a regression because you thought that you were abducted by aliens, and
Right.
you go to an alien regressionist, and they're going to tell you that you were abducted by aliens. That's essentially what you're paying them to do.
Right.
Because you felt like that you were abducted by aliens, and you went to an alien abductionist regressionist, and then they told you that you were abducted by aliens. So it's like this money transfer thing, and it's exactly like kind of what you talked about in one of our very first shows that we ever did, and I've used this a lot when talking about things like this. Like, if you take a paranormal investigator to go investigate the paranormal, then they're 9 times out of 10, they're going to find the paranormal, right?
Right.
If you take a Bigfoot investigator out to that exact same place, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back and say that it's Bigfoot. If you take a UFO investigator out to that exact same place, then guess what they're going to come back with? They're going to come back and say that it's aliens, right?
Right.
So our preconceived notions play a big role in a lot of this stuff. So it almost seems like whatever it is that you're into is whatever it is that you're going to find.
And that's something we are very careful about, and are we perfect with it? No, we're not perfect, but we try very hard not to front load our experiences. And our hypnotherapist is a licensed professional counselor, a psychoanalyst, and he does this for a living, but not, not with a UFO centric focus or anything of that on his practice. And we went with the hypnotic regressions with the idea of just let it go where it goes. If it turns out to be absolutely nothing, hey, fine. That's absolutely cool. If it turns out to be something, then maybe it's another piece of the puzzle. And we did not go in to this particular regression, with the idea of an abduction phenomena, but yet, as it matured, the series of regressions, it starts to look like that. Now, am I saying that's what it was? That's not what I'm saying, but the old analogy, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, and has webbed feet, yeah, it might very well be a duck. So, people can take that, with a grain of salt and do with it what they will. I think you're muted again.
And I got a lot of stuff going on in the background. People are preparing for Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm just trying.
I'm sorry
that that no extra noise comes through. That's just my personal opinion on regression. That's just what that I believe on regression. I think if you know people are being paid to do something, then
Right.
they're going to end up finding that thing that they're
Right.
paid to do, regardless if it actually happened or not. And I'm not saying that everybody does that.
Right. Yeah. And
Okay, because regression has been used for a really long time in a therapeutical sense.
right.
Right.
And our therapist is pro bono. You know, he's part of our team, so he, you know, nothing, no money exchanges hands.
Good deal. That's good to hear. It's actually really good to hear because,
Yeah.
like I said, bro, like if you're going to an alien abduction regressionist and you're paying that alien regressionist $300,
Yeah.
like they're going to tell you that, yeah, you saw the grays, you were abducted, you were on the ship, you got hybrid children, they milked your seed or took your, you know what I mean, took your eggs, and you got all this stuff going on, right?
Yeah, he actually, our guy actually loses money because, you know, our folks are in his office taking up his time, you know, where he could have paying patients. So yeah, that's a very good point though, is, you know, people will, you know, they want to give you, you know, if you pay for a steak, they don't want to give you hamburger. They want to give you a steak.
That's right. Yeah, could you imagine like that's the way that it worked? Like if you just you know, you're paying for a service and then you got a completely different service.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Trey, thanks so much for coming on, brother.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow, that went by quick.
Yeah, it went by really quickly. Yeah, we're kind of we're doing Thanksgiving dinner early this year, so we're not doing it on Thanksgiving, so we're doing it today. That's why I got my sweater on, my Stranger Things sweater.
I thought you dressed up for me.
Maybe I did. Maybe subconsciously I did, Trey. It was things seem to align, synchronicities all coming together right now. Could you let people know where they can find your books and where they can watch the documentary one more time?
Yeah, you can go to my my personal webpage. That's TreyHudsonResearch.com, and they have the links to everything on there, but I'll break the links down individually. Book number 1, The Meadow Project, and book number 2, Return to the Meadow, are both on Amazon.com. You just type my name, Trey Hudson, into the search bar, and those books will pop up. They're available in all the formats. The film, both the Meadow Project and the add-on documentary Helm and Lens, are available at merkelfilms.com, and just click on that, and it's there for purchase. I'm really happy with the film. Everybody that's seen it, really seems to like it. So, I just ask that people, go out there and take a look at these. And I always recommend people, if they want the full Meadow Project experience, is read both the books and see the film, and you'll get a much more depth of understanding of exactly what we're dealing there. And you're buying these films and books helps us with our research because we're completely self-funded.
Absolutely. I always try and tell people to support independent people in their work and not support these giant corporations that have all this backing and stuff, because it's the only way that we can continue to go forward. So whenever I bring people on that are making movies, whenever I'm making movies, and it's time to support those people. So the link is in the description to watch the documentary, and I highly recommend it. It was a really good experience. I highly enjoyed it. And some of the footage that we showed today is in the documentary, not all of it. So you kind of got a sneak peek there of some things that weren't shown. But more importantly, what did you guys think? Leave your comments down in the comment section and let us know your thoughts on if you have a better explanation of what was going on, please leave that in the comments as well. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.